Welcome to the CV Confidence Coach podcast with your host Liz Maguire, where she helps you to learn the secret of an interview-winning CV. Liz shows you how to deliver a compelling CV which increases career confidence, optimises your professional visibility and opens interview doors. Tune in weekly as she shares proven and simple strategies to help you craft your interview-winning CV. Make sure you head over to www.giraffecvs.co.uk to subscribe for our free newsletter with more CV writing and career tips.
Hello, good morning, good day, good evening. Thanks for tuning in again and listening to the CV Confidence Coach podcast. My name's Liz Maguire and I'm your CV Confidence Coach. And on today's podcast, I wanted to talk about grammar and your CV because it's an area that can really make or break your CV, and lots of people fret about their spelling and grammar and want to make sure that it's absolutely perfect for their CV because, as you know, any small error can take your CV from a potential yes to the no pile. So let's discuss some grammar tips that can really up-level your CV. Are you ready? Let's get started. Okay, so it's a given that when you're writing your CV, it's really important to check and double check your spelling and grammar because today's job market is really competitive and potential employers are just looking for reasons to sort the yes candidates from the no's. And incorrect spelling or grammar can make you fall at the first hurdle. So let's look at ways to overcome this and make sure that your CV doesn't fall victim to this scenario. So my first tip is to not rely on the spell checker. Now, it's a really great idea to run the spell checker after you've written your CV, but it's not enough by itself. It's great for picking up obvious errors, but the spell checker will skip straight past homophones, which are words with the same pronunciation but different meanings. For example, there, or there. You know, T-H-E-I-R. Oh, I had to think about that. T-H-E-R-E and T-H-E-Y apostrophe R-E. They all sound the same and they're all perfectly valid, but it could just make your sentence not make sense. So you really need to read through really carefully. Now, it's a good idea to write your CV, put it to one side overnight, and then read it again with a fresh pair of eyes, preferably aloud. Because you're more likely to see these kind of mistakes and hear when a passage is hard to read. It's also a great idea to ask a friend or colleague to proofread your CV too, because they may pick up on something that you've just missed. My second tip is to make sure that you're aware of the tenses you're using on your CV. Something that people do a lot when writing is to accidentally switch between tenses in the same sentence, beginning in the past tense, for example, and ending in the present tense. As a rule of thumb, CVs are usually written in the past tense because they describe jobs, tasks and achievements that have already taken place. So you may consider using your present tense when you're talking about your current role, but personally, I tend to write about people's accomplishments in the past tense because you've already achieved them. And the key really is to be consistent. So read each sentence aloud, as I said in the last tip, because it'll be a lot easier to spot a switch in tense if you do this. My third tip is be aware of random capitals. So when it comes to capitals, our philosophy at Giraffe CVs is less is more. Many people overuse capital letters, capitalising every word in a title or inconsistently capitalising job titles or departments, and even capitalising entire sentences for emphasis. A number of research studies have actually shown that capital letters are harder to read than normal sentence case, and I'm sure you'll agree, we want to make your CV easy to read, not hard in any way to read. It's often enough to capitalise the start of a title rather than the first letter in every word. random capitals in the middle of a sentence can be jarring and actually interrupt the flow. So my top tip is just pick a style and stick with it throughout your CV. If you're going to capitalise a job title, do it consistently. And if you're going to capitalise every word in your titles, do that consistently too. In actual fact, did you know you don't really have to capitalise job titles? I can add a link in the show notes to show you why. My fourth tip is to use consistent punctuation in your CV. This can often relate to bullet points. People often feature a list of bullet points under their job role, and they might end some of the bullet points, but not all of them, with full stops. Whichever way you choose, just make it consistent. I use open punctuation, so I don't tend to put full stops on the end of my bullet points. So that's my personal approach. My next tip is to opt for one space after a full stop. Now, this is quite a personal one for me because I've only just recently stopped doing it. I was taught at school that you had to have 2 spaces after a full stop and 1 everywhere else. And it was drummed into me from the age of 11, and your work was marked down if you didn't adhere to this rule. So it's been quite a difficult one to stop and change my thinking on. But I read a really interesting article on which I'll put in the show notes, which explains why 2 spaces after a full stop used to be the norm, but it's no longer best practice. And believe it or not, adding 2 spaces after a full stop may actually lead recruiters to make assumptions about your age. Apparently, nothing says over 40 like 2 spaces. And I'm not quite there yet, but it's close enough to make me think twice about doing it. It's hard to change habits like these because once something's been drummed into you at school, it's really hard to make the change mentally. But I'm really trying. And the same goes for the Oxford comma. I was taught never to use it, but now, as a free learner in my late 30s, I've made my own decision on the subject. And so I have started using the Oxford comma, but I need to frequently remind the 11-year-old inside of me to fall in line with this decision. So here's a closing argument for 1 character space after a full stop rather than 2. Space is at a premium on your CV, so using 1 space rather than 2 could free up some valuable space. My next tip is to explain your abbreviations. There are some abbreviations that crop up in CVs all the time, GCSEs for example, that shouldn't need any explanation, but generally speaking, even if you're totally aware of what an acronym means, you can't assume that the reader does. So think carefully about using abbreviations in your CV. Abbreviating commonly used words can appear too informal, and if you abbreviate a professional body or software or some industry specific jargon, it assumes that the reader has this specific knowledge too. So it's advisable to explain your abbreviations by writing the full name of the organisation or qualification in full, and then including the abbreviations in brackets after this. And then you can, going forward in your CV, you can use the abbreviation in all subsequent mentions. Finally, my final tip is to keep your sentences simple. So as we've chatted about before, recruiters are generally time poor and need your CV to be easy to scan and digest at a glance. When you're proofreading your CV, think about whether you can simplify what you've written. Are you using 5 words when 2 will do? Is there a more common, accessible word than the one you've used? You can always try turning on the readability statistics tool if you're writing your CV in Word. So you'd go to File, Options and Proofing, and then check the box that says Show Readability Statistics. When you run a spell and grammar check of your document, you'll be given a review of how readable your document is. Aim for a Flesch reading ease of 60% or higher and a Flesch Kincaid level of 9 or below, and no passive sentences for a really readable CV. Okay, so that's the end of our tips for today. Like most people, I'm always keen to learn and improve, and I like to use my newfound knowledge to enhance the quality of my work, the CVs I write for people. So I follow Grammarly on Facebook, that's Grammarly, and this page is fantastic. It gives great fun, bite-sized tips on grammar, punctuation and style in a way that makes you learn the rule quickly. So I'd encourage you to follow them. It's a great resource. And if there's something you want to find out, it's often got the answer. So that's a great everyday way to up-level your grammar. Okay, I hope this has helped. I hope you can take something away and implement it on your CV here. Good luck, and I'll speak to you again next time. Thanks for listening.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the CV Confidence Coach podcast. If you did, please do leave a review and subscribe here in iTunes to make sure you don't miss the next show. Head on over to www.giraffecvs.co.uk to subscribe for our free newsletter for more CV writing and career